This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. That's my favorite quote from Emma Curtis Hopkins. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. And there's an implication in there that whatever it is that's going on, we're talking this too about, it somehow, to use the spiritual term, sucketh. There is something that sucketh in experience, and I need to acknowledge that this too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. There's got to be something good in here. Yeah. So, went to the Hands Off rally in Philadelphia on Independence Mall yesterday, and in preparing to go, I went onto the website so you can print out a Hands Off sign. And the thing that was the most astonishing to me was the number of different versions of the sign that you could get, because there's so many different things to hands off about. So, there's lots of stuff. Hands off Social Security, hands off immigrants, hands off the National Institutes of Health, hands off education, hands off my freedom, hands off whatever. And if you have a particular favorite, I invite you to put it into the chat so we can share that and give a little bit of a voice to that. The hands off. This is the way that we are identifying where we're drawing the line. This too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. And the blessing is in this particular area. What's that mean for me? What's that mean for all of us? What sucketh? So, there's actually a lot of agreement at this point, because the stock markets are down by 10%, and $6 trillion worth of value disappeared in a couple of days. And there are a lot of people who agree that that's a problem. That sucketh. Or that the threat of removing care from the vulnerable by taking away Medicare, which, by the way, if you've ever had somebody in your family who has been on Medicare, and I'm looking around the group and I can see that there's more than one who's here, the requirement to get on a Medicare is you have like less than $3,000 in total assets. So this is not like people are trying to scheme to get onto the program there. Maybe what sucks is the polarization, the sense of us versus them. Maybe it's the loss of the U.S. position as a world leader. There's stuff that's going to be going on with NATO and Ukraine and freedom all over the world for us and for everybody else. And there's a lot of ways that we can get wrapped up in that. And I get it. I get it. It sucketh. And if we remember the principle, we remember our teaching, we remember what Emma says. This too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. And my mind says, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? There is so much stuff that's going on. There's attacks coming in every different direction. My family members were concerned about going to a protest because there's the possibility of getting rounded up. Well, that's never really been a concern here in my country before. But there are concerns about that. And interestingly, what happens when we have one of those thoughts, that triggers the emotions for us. And when we have an emotional reaction, then we have some thoughts about what am I going to do to deal with this emotional reaction that I've had. And I guess the word is coincidentally. I'm not sure there's any such thing as coincidentally. I'm in the midst of a year-long class with my friend Martha Creek on self-compassion, and one of the books that we are studying is Letting Go by Dr. David Hawken. And I have loved David Hawken for an awfully long time, and one of the things that I really love about David Hawken is that he went and quantified the levels of consciousness. Consciousness goes from a very low level of reptilian, see it, kill it, eat it, to a very high level of enlightenment, of there is only love, that absolute awareness of our connection with the infinite. And he discovered that by using muscle testing, kinesiology, there was guidance that was available from the infinite intelligence. We keep on talking about that there's one mind, one power, one presence. He uses muscle testing as a way of connecting with that infinite intelligence. If you get yourself in a clear space and ask a yes or no question, or ask a true-false question, then it will test false and the muscles will go weak. Or if it tests true, the muscles will go strong. So he and a group of people spent a lot of time calibrating veracity of how that actually works. And actually, I'm gonna share a very complicated looking chart of his to kind of show you what's going on. And I use this one because the actual chart itself is the numbers that are over on the right that go from 1,000 full consciousness up at the top to 20 shame all the way down at the bottom. The rest of it is very pretty, and it shows how the pieces fit together, because otherwise it's just a table with some numbers on it. The interesting thing is that down at the bottom is shame and guilt and apathy and grief and fear. And then desire and anger and pride and courage. And then it gets up into neutrality, willingness, acceptance, inner light. We don't get up to inner love until we get to 500. Oneness is up at 540. And it continues awareness, non-duality, and full consciousness is at 1,000. There are a couple of interesting things about the scale. The first interesting thing about the scale is that it's a logarithmic scale. So consciousness at the top end of the scale is much, much more powerful than consciousness at the bottom end of the scale. And you can kind of understand that because when you get up in that scale, it's feeling much more empowered. And yes, I will share a link with the chart so that you can see that yourself. The other interesting thing about the chart is that the level where the turnover happens from lower consciousness to upper consciousness is at the level of 200. Anything below 200 tends to be pressing down into shame and guilt and apathy and grief and fear and despair. And above that level of 200, which is courage, comes neutrality, which is openness, willingness, which is leaning in a little bit, acceptance, and then inner light, and it gets more and more powerful from there. And part of what I've been learning about this year is that if we are in a place of fear, and a lot of people are in a place of fear now, that's what gets us to say, this too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it, because the blessing's not obvious. What the heck's going on here? When we're in a place of fear, there is very much the possibility of lowering ourselves into grief or apathy or even guilt and shame. The big one is apathy. If we find ourselves in fear and we go to apathy, we're giving away our power, we're going to a lower level, and we tend to get stuck there. When we decide that we want to take charge and do something, if we're in fear, we have a desire instead, something we want to have experience, then we tend to get angry. And those actually are higher levels than the fear. And eventually that takes us up to the level of courage. I am going to do something. I'm going to take action. I'm going to go beyond my comfort zone and do something different. Courage is at the 200 level. That's where it shifts. That's where it turns around. And so I hear you say, what difference does that make? Because there's all of this crap going on. And, what am I going to do? How am I going to get from this idea of this too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, into something that is actually going to change my life? And for that, I'm going to turn briefly to what Dr. Hawkins wrote. And this is about life events and emotions. He says, the rationalizing mind prefers to keep the true causes of emotion out of awareness and utilizes the mechanism of projection to do this. It blames events or other people for, quote, causing a feeling and views itself as the helpless, innocent victim of external causes. They made me angry. He got me upset. It scared me. World events are the cause of my anxiety. And he says, actually, the exact opposite is the truth. The suppressed and repressed feelings seek an outlet and utilize the events as triggers and excuses to vent themselves, like pressure cookers ready to vent steam. And so I hear you say, well, does that mean it's my fault? Does that mean there's nothing that's actually going on? There's nothing to be afraid of? There's nothing to be concerned? No. No. What he says later is that what we need to do is let go of the control that those emotions have over us. And I will point out that the book is called Letting Go. So this is kind of the fundamental exercise in the book. He writes, letting go involves being aware of a feeling, letting it come up, staying with it, and letting it run its course without wanting to make it different or do something about it. It means simply to let the feeling be there and to focus on letting out the energy behind it. Oh, I hear you say, that seems pretty simplistic. What the heck is that going to accomplish? If you've never tasted a papaya, and I try and describe a papaya to you, you will never have the experience of a papaya until you try one. In the same way, until you try the process of letting go, you will never understand the power of letting go. When something happens in the world around me, I understand it, I experience it. It makes an impression upon me, and then I have a thought about the impression, and then I have an emotion about the thought. And that emotion triggers an urge for me to think of something different. What can I do? What can I control that's going to make that experience different? And that's the cycle that we get ourselves into. And the point that Hawken makes is, if you just go with the feeling, yeah, something came up for me, I'm feeling concerned or upset or fearful or angry or ashamed, instead of saying, this is why I'm feeling that, this is what I can do about it, stay with the feeling. Let it go. Let it go within you for a few minutes. And what happens, our fear is that it's going to overwhelm us. That's going to become everything that our life is about. And we're going to lose ourselves in whatever that feeling is. And it's actually our ego telling us that if we just go into the emotion and stick with it, that we're going to be doomed and lost. What's going to be doomed and lost is our ego that wants to be in control. So don't go with the thought. Go with the feeling. Just stay with it. And you don't have to do this forever. Try this once or twice. And by happy coincidence, there are lots of things to be fearful about now. There are lots of things that are bringing up emotions now. So you get to try this, possibly on more than one occasion. If we let go of our attachment to things being the way they are or needing to change the way that things are, and simply acknowledge how we're feeling about it, whatever those feelings are, stay with the feeling until the feeling dissipates, then see what happens next. And that's what a divine partnership is. This talk is called Divine Partnership, and I made the talk title up well before the tariffs went into effect and the economy started tanking and we lost $6 trillion worth of value and yada, yada, yada. It was, the happy coincidence for the folks who planned the hands-off march is that all this stuff happened that gave them lots of material to protest against, all those things that you can put into your hands-off signs. That came up later. There was the intention behind that. And what happens is when we are creating our lives, we're not doing it on our own. A divine partnership is just a reminder of the way that we're not controlled by the events around us. And the feelings that we have about those events don't necessarily have to trigger an immediate response. What am I going to do? We can put some spaces in between them. Okay, this thing has happened. First response is, ah! Second response could be, this too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. And instead of going to the response, to the reaction, to our next activity, to stay with the feeling. What was it that caused me to go through that process? Is there guilt or shame or fear or desire or anger, even pride? This is something that's very important to me and it's being taken away. Well, that's pride. And pride is still below the level of courage. If something is going away, go with it. Feel it. Experience it. And then remind yourself of the divine partnership. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now. And I demand to see the blessing in it. And the blessing in it is not necessarily going to be made aware by you figuring something out. There's infinite creative power and limitless intelligence. That power that knows how to create galaxies and has been doing so for 14.2 billion years or 6,000 years or however long you consider history to be. Since the very beginning of history, that one infinite intelligence, that one divine creative power has been creating and it's continuing to do so. And if that power is ready to create something new and your participation and involvement in it is going to be helpful, do you suppose the infinite has a way of letting you know? Do you suppose it's possible that there's a sign or a still small voice or a friend who happens to show up at exactly the right moment to suggest a next course of action? Is that possible? Trick question. If it's an infinite universe of limitless possibilities, of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. I'm going to close with an observation about hopelessness, because there's so much that's going on in our world around us. There are so many things to put a protest sign up about. There are so many things to be fearful and concerned about, and they are all very real. I am not going to do anything to try and minimize those. And you can say to yourself, what good is going to a protest going to do? It's just me walking around carrying a sign, listening to some people talking. What good is that possibly going to do? That is an energetic level of 50 of apathy. That's even lower than fear. So turn it instead into desire, which is the level of 125, or pride, level of 175, or even anger, which is a level of 150. And let it take you to that point of courage, 200, that breaking point where the turnover happens. And the reason I'm saying that those things can happen, and there's actually a statistic. It's called the 3.5% rule, and I'll share the link for this as well. That's an article by the BBC. It turns out historically, and they've done studies going back hundreds of years, when 3.5% of a population, 3.5% of a population gets involved in peaceful protest of something that's going on in the government changes. When 3.5% of the population starts marching and protesting and saying no, the government changes. And that's not wishful thinking. That is stuff that has happened throughout history. 3.5% of the population. In the United States, I did the arithmetic yesterday, it's about 12 million people. So we had 3.5, 4 million people showing up for protests yesterday. Perhaps the next thing that you need to do, that you get to do, is to go up to a level of 200, to have some courage, to grab a sign, and go down and join the protest. And perhaps what's unfolding is not what we used to have. Perhaps we're not going back to the way things were. Our attachment to thinking that the way things were is the best that they could ever possibly be is also part of that lower level consciousness. Maybe there's something new that's possible. Maybe something new is being offered up. I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. What I do know is this too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now. And I demand to see the blessing in it. I invite you to do the same. So it is.